Greetings and welcome to Mount Olympus. I am Hercules Invictus, and today on the UFO entity Enigma, we
Hear
have
you.
our
Oh, down.
wonderful researchers, and we're going to be discussing Mythic Atlantis. Now, before we start, and before I introduce everybody, Atlantis has always meant a lot to me because I'm Greek and it's part of our esoteric mythos, as it were. And I read Plato's Timaeus and Critias, and I followed the threads of many researchers that took me into the Atlantis that they were looking for, or the Atlantis that they were finding. And when I first moved to northeastern New Jersey again, the first thing Athena, my wife, and I did was we had a Mythic Atlantis event, and Nick Curto from our group was there, and several other people were there, and it was a success. It paid for itself, and we made a little bit of money on it, so it was a successful event. But alas, we never had it again, and we had several shows on Atlantis, but it's been a while, and I'd like Atlantis to return again, if not to our world, to my show. So thank you everybody for coming here and sharing what you know of the mystery of Atlantis. And we have Tim Swartz with us today. Greetings, Tim.
Hi, Hercules. Thank you for having me today.
Thank you for being here. And we have Alan Greenfield.
I'm here.
Yes, you are. I'm glad. Thank you for being here. We have Paul Dale Roberts. Greetings, Paul.
Hey, greetings. I love it. I'm here. Let's talk about Atlantis.
We definitely will, and thank you for being here. We have Pamela Joy Fernslerand. Greetings, Pamela.
Hey there.
I'm glad that you're here.
Okay.
And we have Michael Del Rusi. Is Michael here yet? Or
Watch it, cat.
Michael Del Rusi not here yet? We have Michael Kopf. Greetings, Michael.
Thank you for having me back on.
Thank you for being on. And I love the art you created with AI. And hopefully we'll be seeing a lot more of your art on your appearances on the show.
Thank you. I'm looking forward to it.
And we have one more possible guest, Setna Kemet. Is Setna here? No? Okay, so we're without Michael and Setna. So we will start in the beginning, where we always do, with Tim Schwartz. Tim, what can you tell us about Mythic Atlantis?
Oh my, Atlantis. Isn't it amazing that it was Plato who first introduced us to Atlantis all of those centuries ago? And here we are in the 21st century, still talking about it, still fascinated by it. I think that alone is an amazing thing, that you have something from that far back, from Plato's dialogues, that has gripped us so intensely that in 2026 we're doing a show about mythical Atlantis. It's really mind-boggling, and the thing about Atlantis is that it has really brought in so many different facets of mythology. The first thing that comes to my mind is that, and a lot of people may not realize that, is that the whole UFO phenomena has also managed to bring Atlantis into it as well. Uh, there have been contactees who have claimed that the UFO occupants that they came into contact with were descendants from Atlantis. And then, of course, you have the whole Shaver mystery, which brought in Atlantis and Lemuria into it, except that Shaver had his Atlantis millions of years ago into the past rather than what is it like? It's supposed to be like about 12,000 years ago, I think is what the current estimate is supposed to be. But there is something fascinating about the whole idea of a civilization that existed, on this planet before our current civilization, and not just a civilization, but a supposedly a technological superior civilization, even though that wasn't. I mean, it was somewhat part of Plato's dialogue. I mean, the Atlanteans, were they were a seafaring people and conquerors, and because of their hubris, managed to piss off the gods and send their civilization to the bottom of the oceans. And there's been speculation over the centuries about where Atlantis existed. You had that it existed past the Pillars of Hercules, which is the Straits of Gibraltar, out somewhere in the Atlantic Ocean, and of course modern interpretations have it possibly being what's left of the island of what is it, Santorini? Am I pronouncing that correctly? Hercules.
Santorini.
Say that again. I'm sorry.
Santorini.
Santorini. Yeah, I'm terrible with names. Because when that volcano blew, I mean, you might as well have, if you were there and survived, it was the end of the world. So, you could see where these legends come from. And of course, Plato supposedly got his from his ancestor Solon. Am I pronouncing it? Solon the lawgiver? I'm terrible with names, as everyone knows that. So,
Great with them.
I'm sorry.
You're doing great with the Greek names. I'm impressed.
Yeah, well, I have trouble pronouncing Anglo-Saxon names, Hercules. So, when it comes to anything beyond that, I'm terrible at it. But supposedly these Egyptian priests, read the story all out of their temples and pillars, and then relayed the story to him. But then you had people like the sleeping prophet Edgar Casey, who during his channeled messaging talked about Atlantis, except that, Casey, I think, was probably one of the first to introduce the idea that Atlantis was far superior technology-wise, maybe even to what we have today, making the use of especially like power crystals that were part of the destruction, of that civilization. And I will show you here. This is supposedly an Atlantean power crystal, or what's left of it.
Oh, I've got one of those.
Yep, as provided by the late great Timothy Green Beckley. Supposedly this was just like a shard of the power structures that took place over Atlantis. But you have a lot of different civilizations that arose that claimed that they received their knowledge from an even older civilization, which has led people to speculate that these were the remnants, the colonists of Atlantis who weren't part of the original destructions of their civilization and managed to survive and pass along their civilization, their ideas and mathematics and agriculture, things like that, all across the world as well. I was reading this today, and I didn't realize this. There is a specific genetic group. I can't remember what it is now. The hapalog or hapagood B genes that are found predominantly in the Middle East and around the Mediterranean, and then oddly enough has also been found in North America, especially up into Canada, around the Midwest, Wisconsin, Minnesota, in the Native American tribes that live there. Which of course makes you wonder if this wasn't a genetic group that actually existed in, whatever Atlantis was, whatever that civilization, that ancient civilization that existed maybe during the last ice age, and may have been destroyed when the polar ice caps melted, or there is the idea also that there was a comet that struck the Earth somewhere in possibly North America, Greenland, someplace like that, that devastated a lot of areas. And I mean, there's a lot of good evidence this happened, and may have been the reason that this ancient civilization went under. But again, I'll go back to this whole thing about how fascinating it is to me that we're still talking about Atlantis, and you had writers like Brad Steiger and even John Keel writing about Atlantis with their own speculations and theories, and I was on an episode of The Unexplained with William Shatner, and the entire episode dealt with Antarctica. And one of the big underlying themes of this episode was the possibility that Antarctica at one time was Atlantis, because we know that Antarctica hasn't always been, at the South Pole, and that it drifted from the north down to where it was. And there's fossil evidence that that dinosaurs lived on Antarctica, plant life. So it's a favorite theory that Atlantis may have existed in Antarctica. I'm not saying that any of that is true. It's just fun to talk about. And again, the whole mythology of Atlantis, this antediluvian civilization that had a major influence on our own to various degrees, is just a fascinating topic. It's a fascinating topic, and I can't wait to hear what everyone else has to say about this. And I'll leave it at that, Hercules.
Well, thank you. That was a great place to start in.
Shut the door.
That was a great place to continue from. And I was going to say that I experimented with publishing Kindle books a while back. And the first Kindle book that I published was about quartz crystals being the ice from Olympus, because that's how certain authors that write about crystals have referred to it. And they've developed all this metaphysical information on crystals in Atlantis, crystals in Greece. And again, until I encountered it in the crystal literature, I never encountered it before in any of my other explorations. So I don't know how modern that information is. But thank you very much, Tim. You're awesome.
Oh, thank you, Hercules. Well, and I should point out real quick too. You're talking about crystals. Crystals have played a big part in UFO mythology as well. With some people coming back from their experiences, clutching crystals said to have been given to them by the UFO occupants.
And that will be the subject of another show. Thank you. And now we move onward. And we move on. Alan. Greetings, Alan.
Okay, yes. Hello, Hercules. I'm so glad to be here, even though you didn't mention me in the show notes.
I did.
Oh, you did? Okay. Well,
Oh.
never mind. So let me talk about what I am reasonably certain is true, and then apply it to the legend of Atlantis. We would find fairly general agreement, unlike when I was a kid back in the days of the dinosaurs. Continental drift was considered a myth, and if you took science in high school, that was don't believe that. There is no continental drift. The continents are as they are, kind of the steady state theory. That is now accepted science, that the continents do drift. The current thinking is they drift very, very slowly. But as of just yesterday, I was reading something about in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, they're finding the remnants of what appears to be a huge anomaly in the continental plates, as if there were other continental plates that are no longer anywhere near the surface. But as science progresses, or maybe I should say, quote, progresses, we're finding that our understanding of the underlying mantle and what do they call it? It's not subluxation. That's chiropractic, but the way continents drift and bang into one another and get pushed down underneath. Apparently, that has been the present continental shelves are not the first or the only. So we know, or we think we know, that at one time there was only one continent in an endless ocean, which interestingly enough, in the Greek mythos, there was one ocean called Ocean, which
Yes.
surrounded the world. And at one time, supposedly long before any sentient beings existed, that was the case. I think they called it Gondwanaland for convenience. So once you begin to say, well, continents drift, and start to account for Atlantis and Lemuria and Mu and other stories of drifting continents, you will find that some of the stories are certainly true. Doggerland, which connected a huge body when it was above the water, connected Britain to Europe. I know that the British probably are not real happy that that ever happened, but nevertheless, people lived there, and for a very long time during the last ice age, there's only so much water, yes? And when water is frozen, as we all know from Science 101, it tends to make the level of the oceans lower. And since the Ice Age lasted for a very, very long time, there were exposed lands in various parts of the world which are now totally underwater. Doggerland is one. Beringia, which linked Asia and North America, is another. And a full continent called Zealandia. I'm not making these up. These are names that geophysicists, I guess, have made up to account for what amounts to continents that are certainly sunken. And then, of course, the reason that lemurs are called lemurs is because they are accountable only on the Indian subcontinent and on the eastern islands off the coast of Africa. And why is that? Because at one time there was I don't think it was a continent, but a large island which was above the water and which the lemurs, which are sort of the predecessor of monkeys, although they still exist, wandered freely from India to Africa until it sank. So all over the world, you have founding stories of civilizations from Sumer, from Mohenjo-Daro in India, even as late as the paleo natives of the Americas. One example that I find particularly interesting is the Aztec origin story, which sounds a lot like Moses headed to the promised land. According to the Aztec story, they originally come from an island that was north of where the Aztecs eventually settled in the Valley of Mexico, back when they called themselves the Mexica, thus giving Mexico its name. Their god, their principal god, with, I'm not even going to attempt to pronounce his name, but the god said, I will take you on a long journey, and you will stop, and hundreds of years will pass by. And I'm not mocking this story, I'm just telling it censoriously. Okay, so they traveled under the priests of their god, looking for the sign of where to finally settle. And for 200 years, they wandered, variously described, probably from somewhere in southern Arizona, which, by the way, was originally a sea. My advanced education was in Tucson, and we could go up out in the desert and pick up fossilized, what were they called? They looked like bugs, but they weren't. Precambrian. Anyone help me on that? Anyway, they were beg pardon?
Were they trilobites?
Yes, trilobites. You could pick up trilobites in the desert because that was all in primordial seas. So the Aztecs said, we come from Aztlan, an island where we traveled to what amounts to northern Mexico, stopped along the way looking for the sign, and the sign that they were given was a common one all over the world, which is a snake in the mouth of an eagle, a symbol you will find in many, many cultures. And when they finally saw that, which, by the way, is the central symbol on the Mexican flag to this day, that's where they settled in a very unpromising swamp and became the dominant force in Mesoamerican civilization. It sounds a lot like the story of Moses from Egypt to Judea. And I'm not saying they're the same story. I'm saying that you have this whole set of legends of the lost land. We know there was extensive flooding as the ice melted at the end of the late the last ice age, and a lot of places sank. So were there civilizations before that? Well, every rock that they kick over, they find a way to revise their history. One of the latest things is, well, long before Columbus, apparently the Polynesians came to South America. So the theory that some people, including advocates of continental drift, came from was we're not talking about space beings of an advanced technology. We're talking about human beings that were later considered to be gods because they were a maritime civilization that traveled the entire planet, mapped it, of which we have relics of the maps. There's a great book by Charles Hapgood with a foreword by Albert Einstein called Maps of the Ancient Sea Kings, I believe was the name of it. And that was something I read in my youth, and I thought, yeah, clearly there is some kind of prehistoric, in the literal sense, world culture of sea navigators who mapped perhaps the entire world. There has been so much lost. I think it's something like 97% of all named documents from antiquity that are lost. We know the names because they're mentioned in the ones that have survived, which are a considerable number. But most of the known documents of antiquity are lost. And there's a catch there as well, because how many documents that weren't mentioned in the surviving sources were there? And the probability is many, many. So you kick over a rock and you find Mohenjo-Daro in India. You kick over another rock, you find there was a whole civilization just at the time when the Ice Age was ending in what is now Turkey, as they're calling it this week, that really doesn't fit the timeline of civilization as of 20 years ago. And if we keep kicking over rocks, eventually we'll find a relatively advanced civilization all over the world. And if that doesn't fit Atlantis and Lemuria pretty closely, I don't know what does. It's part of the legendary origin story of virtually every civilization that goes back to at least Neolithic times and probably beyond. Or as Donovan put it, way down below the ocean, there I want to be. It may be.
Thank you very much, Alan. Tim, as usual, presented us with a multifaceted power crystal from Atlantis, and you focused on some of the facets and drawn us in with your fascinating descriptions. Thank you very much. And now onwards to Paul.
Way down in the lonely ocean. Yes, I remember that song. Atlantis is just absolutely fascinating because here you got the Greek philosopher Plato writing about Atlantis back in 360 BC, and to this present time, we're still talking about Atlantis. And I have a little connection to Atlantis. My sister, Sharon Roberts, she was a yachty while she was living in Santorini Island. She lived there for 5 years. She was married to Mike McDaniels, and they lived out there for 5 years. And he was a maritime archaeologist. And the people that they talked to that lived on that island actually believed that Santorini Island was part of Atlantis. And they also believed that Lemuria or Mu went to war with Atlantis and actually destroyed Atlantis in one night. But other stories that they talked about on Santorini Island that my sister would relate to me is the fact that extraterrestrials had an influence with this highly technical, advanced civilization that lived on Atlantis. And Poseidon, a god or an extraterrestrial, was the founder of Atlantis. And I guess Atlantis, they were saying that it became corrupt. A lot of bad things were happening, so it was destroyed. But there's so much evidence around the world that an advanced civilization had an influence on other civilizations. You have all these ancient marvels. Gobekli Tepe,
Yep.
Puma, Punku, if I'm saying that right, in Bolivia. Those stone blocks that are cut with precision. I mean, it had to be advanced tools to cut those blocks. There's just no way that primitive cavemen made all those blocks. The Nazca Lines, the Great Pyramid of Giza, the Baghdad Battery, Yonaguni Monument with all the rock formations that you see over in Japan. And I know I'm just not going to pronounce this right. The Antikythera mechanism over in Greece, which is like 2,000 years old, and it's an astronomical computer. I mean, either extraterrestrials were helping mankind back in those times, or we were just really smart people without any help. But I do believe there's that extraterrestrial connection. I'm a firm believer of ancient aliens, and there's a lot going on. I mean, my sister, when she was living on Santorini Island, those people, I mean, she said, if you ask them, they said, you are walking on a part of Atlantis. So Atlantis is probably going to be with us for a long, long time. So, but it's a very fascinating subject. Oh, and then also too, Tim mentioned the shaver mystery. When I was a little boy, I used to pick up little rocks and look at it and see if there was any images on the rocks or if there was any writing on the rocks because of the shaver mystery. I used to read those books and everything else. So I would hope that I was find a rock that's something about the last of the Lemurians, and I would have this great find. I never found that rock.
Well, I'm glad you looked for it.
I did look for it.
I was an adult when I found out about the shaver mystery and near an adult. So after that, I remember looking for a while to see if I could find any rocks that had ancient history captured in them. Sadly, I didn't find any. But thank you very much, Paul. You've actually introduced something I'll be sharing at the end of the episode today. But thank you so very much.
You're welcome.
Onwards to Pamela.
I have a different story to tell you guys.
Okay.
I lived in Atlantis for 7 lifetimes, and I worked at the phenomenal library there. And it was just a real privilege to look at all those works that were stored there. Many came from thousands of years ago. And according to Madame Blavatsky's book, Land of the Gods, they have all been replicated at their library there. Unfortunately, the only way to get there is by invitation and a guide. So we will not get to see them probably in our lifetimes. However, my dealing with Atlantis was I was also part of a colony in what you can now call Portugal, and had a governorship in the Caribbean in another lifetime. I visited that, went back in 2003, and I looked at my lifetime mate, and I said, we're home. So it felt familiar. You're supposed to pay to go down there, but we just slipped by because it just felt like we could, and we should have. And that was my experience with that. And the UFOs, I also have experience with that as cataloged by Dr. David Jacobs, who developed a test for figuring out what were false memories and what were true. And he decided mine was true. And pretty much only about 10% are actually true. So those records have been lost to history because they were made on tapes, which, degrade over time. I don't even know if he's still alive, but they were made back in 1997 and categorized what I saw with the UFOs. So the UFOs, I think, have been part of my life since I was 3 years old, and it was taken with a group of children. And there are some rumors about what they did with the kids and how they would separate them, and some would turn out to be really good people and others not so much. They didn't turn them evil, they just turned them out to be opposites. I remember seeing one, the Letterkenny Army Depot in South Central Pennsylvania had a large military site there, mostly for storage of old weapons, old bombs, and every now and then they would shoot some off and the metal cabinets would shake. So it kind of felt like it was in a war zone anyway. I don't think they do that anymore, but it was an interesting place to live because it felt like, well, bombs were going off. They were detonating old bombs and things kind of shook. I learned a lot about Atlantis through clairvoyance, like Madame Blavatsky, Edgar Cayce, H. Spencer Lewis wrote about them. He founded the current Rosicrucian order. Of course, he's long gone. So I read some books on that. But besides their writings and what I read from various authors, like the ones I mentioned, I feel a personal connection because it's part of my journey of remembrance that I'd like to write about, but not finding a publisher who won't give me a runaround about, well, you have to do this or you have to do that, or they're telling you the wrong thing. And I'm just like, you know what? Forget it. Whoever wants them can have them. And the gods that came out of this, like one of you said, were probably humans originally that had access to great energy, great power energy. I even wrote about them in my private stories, that they have a base on the southern pole of Jupiter, where it sparkles like tiny blue lights all the time. And I hate saying "anda" because I can't speak fast enough for the words that are in my brain, so that's why I do that.
You're doing fine, Pam.
I have one of those Atlantean crystals that you spoke about, a really nice white one. I keep it on my private altar. And I also have something that a fellow from Puerto Rico sent me way back in the 70s. He said they were Atlantean, they were called Illumina triangles. And they were just gray and they were rect triangles, and some of them had formed a six-pointed object. It was gray. I still have some of them. They they boost energy. That's all I can tell you about them. I don't know anything else about them. I keep them close at hand, and if I want to do some ritual work and boost energy, I put them on my forehead. So, anything you want to ask me, Hercules?
These visions that you've had in the library that you're speaking of, is that something that's in this physical world or in the astral plane or some other place of existence? Because I know through dreams, astral projection, other such exercises, you can wind up in places that contain tons of information. Some of it's in books and scrolls. Some of it is on like cloudy egg crystals. There's all sorts of things that are either there in the astral that the mind produces to understand what it is that you're experiencing. So where exactly are these libraries?
The library is in Shambhala.
In Shambhala, okay.
Yes, and it is in a third dimension that we live in. But they were drawn from the fourth dimension. When we thought they were lost physically, they were drawn back from the fourth dimension. And it's interesting you should mention eggs. Across the world, there are two distinct world mythologies. One involves a swan and one involves an egg. And it depends on where you are, what the mythology says. But I also find it interesting that Sirius A, Sirius X, were all involved in great advances in astronomy. So I think somehow some of the advances in science and the evolution of the human race come from those areas. I think Sirius X is a radio star. Off the top of my head, I can't recall what Sirius A is, but we've also had Orion, like the belt of Orion. Some things come from that as well. And hopefully there wasn't a war between the two of them, because now we have dogs and cats. Yeah, they like to fight each other, mostly. So I find it interesting. The swan is the material form of the phoenix, and you also find it as a thunderbird in Southwestern mythology.
In Greek mythology, Leda and the swan is the story that comes to mind, where Zeus.
Bingo, yeah.
Um,
You want to go there? I don't think we want to go.
Leda, and she gave birth to two sets of twins that were hatched from eggs. It was Helen of Troy and her sister Clytemnestra, and then Castor and Polydeuces, or Pollux, as he's called in English. So there's that mythology there. And also Lemnian Greek, which is where the Argonauts found the women warriors, like the Amazon island they went to. And according to further mythology, what do you call it? Hercules visited them when he became a god on Olympus to get a bow from someone they had left behind, so that the Greeks can win the Trojan War. And the children of the Argonauts and the Amazons, they were the rulers of the island, but there was a revolt and they got kicked out, and they supposedly went down to Africa and became one with the Dogon tribe. And the information about Nomo and the amphibious aliens that keep popping up in the literature, like in the Serious Mystery and other writings, near Lemnos, there was a mermaid colony that figures in the myths of Hephaestus, and it was led by Queen Kabiro. And there were mysteries called the Samothracian mysteries, which are rumored to be the same on Lemnos, where the Kabiri were celebrated. So that whole thing with the Nomo from obscure Lemnian mythology made its way into the Dogon mythology later on.
Yes, and there were three tribes. I'm not sure if one came from the other or not. There were the Libyans and the Scythians. I'm not sure who the other ones were, but I have a whole book on Amazons that I got a long time ago. And I find it interesting that basically Wonder Woman was from the Atlanteans, just made up from all sorts of female gods. And that we have the movie Aquaman, which also treats of Atlanteans under the sea. Now, I'm not sure where these people were from, but the blue people that they found around Roanoke, and I believe there's an island in the North Pacific called Hell, Hel, that every 400 years becomes visible for a brief period of time and then goes back invisible again. And that some of the people that they're finding underground now, or the civilizations that they're finding deep underground now, which have been written in other stories, fictional stories, there's a whole civilization under the crust of our Earth that people are just finding about now. And the only reason they're written in fiction is because people wouldn't believe it otherwise. But there's a whole lot going on under the Earth's crust as well. And might I also add, there's an anomaly in the North Pacific Ocean off Newfoundland. Very odd. And that the poles can be traced by the deserts we have on our Earth. The Gobi Desert, the Great American Desert, all sorts of deserts. You can see the pattern of movement of the Earth just by the deserts that used to be poles. Okay, I'm going to shut up now.
No, thank you you've expanded and added mysteries upon mysteries in the areas that the others have brought up. And Tim and Paul both brought up the Shaver mystery, and you brought up the underground humans, which were the Darrow and the Tarot, and there's all mythology of the underground people. So thank you very much.
And the Skywalker Ranch.
There you go.
Yeah.
And Hercules, I want to mention one little thing too. It just kind of reminded me. Some people believe that Atlantis was a huge mothership that was in the middle of the ocean, and at some point in time, they said, we need to go, and they took off. And High Brazil, which is near Ireland, people believe that that was a UFO that was floating on the ocean, and it took off. That's why you can't find it anymore.
Very cool.
It's coming back.
Too. And last but not least, Michael Kopf, who made a really cool AI of Mount Olympus and a UFO that hopefully we'll be using as a future representation of this show. Greetings, Michael.
Thank you. And like Pam, I have an interesting connection with Atlantis, and boy, I could talk for hours about Atlantis.
Me too.
And memories that I have of actually being there, where there were the seven sisters that were ruling Atlantis at one point, and this was when they were trading with the moon and other colonies on the Earth's surface. And so the reason I have memories of this is I was the captain of their ship that they would use, and this was before the destruction. And so I have memories too of where Atlantis did science experiments that we are starting to do again today, where we create hybrid animals, or today we're working on mixing different animals and different abilities to make super soldier type people going to fight our battles now. And so all of this kind of is like watching history replay itself. And Atlantis, to me, the reason why it's such the mystery is you look at the Egyptian gods and the Egyptian god Thoth. It is said that Thoth was a survivor of Atlantis. That's where he got his knowledge. He brought the gods with him from the west. Well, what was to the west? The oceans, you could say, or the desert. But if we look at Atlantis as a ship, it could have been in the desert. It could have been in the water. And what amazes me is how many places we look on our planet and we go, oh, there's ancient ruins here. That could be Atlantis. And we assume Atlantis would be in the Atlantic Ocean because of the name connection, where Lemuria is thought to be in the Pacific. And I often wonder, could Atlantis be, down in the Indian Ocean or, around Australia? Could that be Atlantis? Because we make all these assumptions based on a name in the writings of Plato that it was to the west. Well, with things moving around, continental drift, who's to say, where what is, or what the land looked like back then? And if we've had glacial meltings, water rose, so land disappears. But the most interesting aspect to the Atlantis mystery is they say it sank, but yet we don't explore our oceans to find it. We just will say, oh, we'll search this area, or we'll search this area, but it's not there, so it didn't exist, so it's a myth, and they just move on. We have so much of our oceans undiscovered, unmapped, untouched that it could be up near England. I've heard stories of Atlantis being possibly up around England and Wales, and that's where Avalon could have been Atlantis at one point, where it was above the water line, and then another cataclysm of water caused it to go back under. That's why we can't find Avalon, even though some say it's Glastonbury. And that's the uniqueness of these stories, is there's so many pieces that everybody can look and go, well, there's a piece of the tale here in Africa. There's a piece of the tale here in the Mediterranean. There's a piece here near Cuba. There's a piece that's near South America. So we naturally assumed, well, Atlantis must have been here. And if it was a continent, as everyone says, if it broke, how could a whole continent just disappear and nobody else wrote about it? Just Plato. And that's the mystery to me, is why is only one culture talking about this place? And then centuries later, other cultures pick it up and go, oh, there's this place we should all start looking for. And then it gets a resurgence. Where were the English talking about it? The Celts, the Saxons? Where were the indigenous people? And I think the problem we have today is we look at everything through modern eyes, modern language. And I brought this up when we were talking about, on another show, when you see a UFO, we call it an unidentified flying object or a spaceship. Back in the days when Plato was writing, they didn't have spaceships. They didn't have, terminology like we have. So they would call it a chariot or a flaming disc. Well, in that case, we have to take Atlantis and break it down to our most basic language to try and figure out where is it really, because we keep looking at it with modern maps, modern everything, but that's not when the story existed. That's not when the land existed. And I kind of am like Paul when he brought up, was it a spaceship? I thought that was the greatest thing when Stargate Atlantis came out. And they talked about this city being shielded and rests on the water and can go anywhere it needs to go. And to me, I was like, well, if we got an island that's no longer an island on our planet, and there's no like coastline that's changed because the volume of water has changed, this continent must have been sitting on the water, not in the water, and therefore had to take off because we can't find it. It left. That's science making sense, but then we're assuming science is right to start with and that we understand how water displaces and everything. And so we really got to sit back and look at and go, could Egyptians be Atlanteans, some of the survivors? Could the Greeks be some of the survivors? The Romans, the Celts, all these cultures around the earth that just mysteriously have a jump in evolution that can't be explained in technology. We just say, oh, well, the ancient aliens came and helped them. Well, that's very possible and very plausible, but could it also be that Atlantis, there were more survivors than they thought, and they were able to sail out or land craft further out, and all these cultures around our planet are really Atlantean culture based through mixture. And so that's an area where, I feel like we need to really look, and that would explain why in genetics we have certain jumps where certain people have certain genetic markers that aren't in others in the same area. Well, maybe that's an Atlantean marker. We don't know because we don't have one to compare to that we know of. So I could keep talking about this, but I'm going to leave it at that. And if you guys have any questions, I am totally open.
We're moving there next. Thank you very much. Michael, a pleasure to have you on the show, and I'm looking forward to you being on the show more. And since you and Pam can talk about this for hours, what I'm about to announce should be a good thing for you. I'm doing a multimedia type of exploration on Atlantis. There'll be a monthly show, just like the UFO Entity Enigma is a monthly show. There'll be a panel show, and then there'll be individual shows. So I have a lot of hosts who have something to do with Atlantis, whether spiritually, metaphysically, in terms of research or so forth. So we'll be focusing on different facets of the mystery. The goal won't be to get an answer, but to help people find the Atlantis they're looking for. And I've come to believe in my late 60s, as I approach my 70th year, that we live in stories, and the stories define our reality. So finding one's stories or the stories one chooses to believe in is a very important thing because it influences how you view your life and all things in it. So it'll be a spiritual and fun adventure, and I'll invite you and Pam first.
Oh, thank you.
And
Thank you. I love that idea.
anyone else who wants to join is welcome. And now we'll go backwards with the contact information and questions. Michael, since you were the last to speak and the last on the list who's here today, how can people find you and contact you? And also, if you have any questions to ask anybody that's spoken before, now's the time to do it.
You can find me on Facebook under my name, Michael Kopf, and I am on YouTube. And let's see, questions would be, I think I would ask to Paul because he seems to go more with the ancient aliens. The theories that, like, where I've heard certain stories of Atlanteans trading with the moon as it's a colony of alien races up there, or was destroyed before the moon appeared. What's your thoughts around that? Do you think that's plausible and within the realms of what we know of Atlantis, or do you think that's people grasping at straws trying to embellish the story?
And Michael, who are you talking to? Just to me?
Yeah, I was asking you, Paul, because you brought
Oh,
it up, and so
um, my thoughts with Atlantis is I don't know because I wasn't there. Um, it would seem like you and Pam would have a better insight because you feel like you were part of Atlantis in a previous life. So um, I kind of believe that because at one point in time, I met a person who claimed up and down that she was reincarnated from Atlantis. She lived with that civilization. And she had all the answers of everything what Atlantis was and everything. And I introduced her to best-selling author Brad Steiger. Brad Steiger actually did an interview and placed some of her information in one of his books. So I wish I could say I have a good insight. I just believe that because of all the advancement in all these different civilizations on Earth, they were influenced by somebody somewhere, some somewhat. I mean, it came from somewhere. So it's either extraterrestrials. We were just damn smart, and then we built these pyramids and everything else. So that's kind of how I look at it.
thank you. And I'll yield there and let Hercules pass it to the next person.
Thank you, and we pass it to Pamela.
Oh, yes, you can also find me on Facebook as Pamela Joy Fernsler. And you can also use the ancient technique of email, pjfernsler@outlook.com.
Thank you. Do you have any questions to ask anybody, Pam?
No, not right now.
Okay, thank you very much. Paul?
Yeah, I'm easy to find. Just Google or Bing my name, Paul Dale Roberts. All my articles, I have my contact information. You'll see the paranormal hotline. You'll see the email. I have books with Amazon. I have books. Um, I got just to let Greenfield know some of my books you have to pay, especially the printed ones. But a lot of the ebooks are free. I have them on the Internet Archive, and I have them on Google Books and Google Play. So, and I'm starting to sell some of my ebooks on Google Play. So, anyway, I'm easy to find.
Thank you very much, Paul. Do you have any questions you'd like to ask anybody or any statements you'd like to make?
No, no, just I'm really happy to see everybody here, Michael and Pam and Greenfield and Tim, and it's just nice to good crowd here.
Would you like to be a part of this Atlantean adventure, an occasional guest or regular person?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Fantastic. And you had invited me to something. It looks like I can have that free.
Oh, also too, just to mention, I talked to Hercules about it, but I don't know if a lot of people are aware of this, but Nick Pope, which you see a lot on Ancient Aliens, has stage 4 cancer,
Oh,
and it's really terrible. He put a message out. He says he will pass, so there's nothing to fight. He says he's a goner, and it's real sad. Nick Pope endorsed some of my books, and I mentioned Nick Pope in all my books. And yeah, he's a great guy, and I think we should probably put him in the Hall of Fame.
The Hall of Heroes, yes, we do.
Hall of Heroes.
We
Yeah.
will. It's on the short list.
I'll second that.
Thank you. And now we go to Alan. Greetings, Alan, who brought us into a 19th century seance with his presence.
Oh, and Beckley is coming through, and he says, "Don't buy Alan's books, buy mine. They're still out there. They always will be." Oh, I'm back. Did I say something? Oh, okay. Let me just say this: crystals are also used in healing because, especially quartz crystals, have certain properties that, from remote antiquity to the present, as I know people in the present that use them. I don't know whether it's their vibration or whatever, but they do have definite healing properties. Another thing is one of my favorite contactees, the guy from said to be a moonshiner, but the guy from opposite Brown Mountain who was taken into the mountain and then off to the planets. He showed me, and I took a picture of it. I don't know where that picture is, of a crystal that was given him by the Pewamians, the survivors of a destroyed planet, and who live on Venus. I guess they like the heat, you know. But anyway, so crystals have an intertwining with this whole thing. Also, orgone energy has a connection to crystals. But let me say this. I think that Atlantis, not speaking of it in the way that Hercules was alluding to, which is a symbol that guides us, but rather as an actual place. Think composite. That is, all of these places that had locations in the now sunken parts of the world after the end of the Ice Age, when the sea levels rose. That would be Zealandia and Beringia and Doggerland, the whole set. They all probably form a part of the story of civilizations that sank beneath the ocean. That may be true of Avalon as well, but I do think Avalon is actually a place in another dimensional structure. Anyway, think composite, and you may be coming very close to the truth about where Atlantis is. Atlantis is in all of these places. And as Hercules is putting it, in the heart as well. To get in touch with me, I'm on Facebook daily, on X daily, on Tumblr daily. Basically, it's all the same stuff. So it's not like I'm that prolific. And where else? Oh, this interesting place called Threads, about which I know nothing, but I post there anyway. And I am told that I now have a new website, and it is alangreenfield.org. That is alangreenfield.org. And of course, my books are on Amazon, and as I like to put it, wherever fine books are sold.
Thank you, very eloquently said. And we will also be starting a series of shows based on Alan's writings. So stay tuned for that. But we're going to cover all his books. His books are very creative and full of obscure arcana that is difficult to come by anywhere else. So I highly recommend you look at his published library. And of course, we're fortunate enough to have him on the show. Alan, do you want to be invited on this adventure as well if you have the time?
Sure, I have. I mean, Atlantis is a key foundational factor, and I would love to be a part of that.
Thank you. I'm greatly honored. And last but not least, Tim Swartz.
Well, thank you, Hercules. Something that I was going to mention in the beginning of this program is about Atlantis and how we're still talking about it today. But look at all of the movies and television shows and cartoons that have been made over the years about Atlantis. I mean, if Atlantis was an actual civilization at one time, I think that they would be aghast to see all of these different, especially movies about them, war gods of Atlantis, Atlantis, the lost continent, what was it, Catwomen of Atlantis, to me, it's just eternally fascinating how it's become really such a part of our pop culture. It really has. There's even a cartoon, a television series cartoon called Futurama, which takes place in the year 3000. And at one point, they discover the lost civilization of Atlanta, and it's Atlanta, Georgia, that has sunk beneath the ocean, and they've all become mermaids thanks to the caffeine from the Coca-Cola plant in Atlantis. So that's just again, that's just part of that amazing pop. Yeah, there you go. It actually caused the residents of Atlanta to evolve rapidly into people, mermaids, mermen, that sort of thing. But again, it's fascinating how this whole concept has really become such an integral part of our own culture after all of these centuries in all kinds of diverse factors. But as for myself, if anyone is interested in reading all of my books, easiest place would be to go to Amazon.com and type in my name, Tim R. Swartz, and they'll all come tumbling out for your reading pleasure, both as print and ebooks. Our most recent book that has been published, and it's been out about a year now, so I mean it's starting to get a little long in tooth, is called A Weird Time, Exploring the Mysteries of Time and Space. Paul and Hercules have excellent chapters in this book. Our new book, which will be coming out sometime in the next few months, keeping my fingers crossed, is called the Persistence of Ghost, and it's about the persistence of ghost. I'll leave it at that. And I've got a website which I've been trying to work on it, but right now it's just kind of a placeholder site till I can get some more stuff on it, and it's timrswartz.com. And if you want to email me, you can email me at trswartz@gmail.com. And thanks again, Hercules. This has been a fascinating conversation, and I look forward to our next one.
I do too as well. Would you like me to invite you on the Atlantis quest? Do you have time to join us for an episode or three?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I don't know how much I can contribute to it, but I can ramble on with the best of them.
Very good.
And Hercules.
It's prophetic. My next conversation with Brian Walker and Nicholas Dyack and Michelle Brittany, who have the Sword and Sandal Cinema shows that we do. I was going to ask if we could focus on Atlantis every few months and look at those cartoons and movies and things like that. Yes, Paul.
Yes, Hercules. I have to mention, you're talking about pop culture. Atlantis is featured in Marvel Comics with Submariner in Atlantis.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, DC Comics with Aquaman in Atlantis. And what's kind of unique is DC and Marvel at times work together. And so Aquaman in his DC universe can go through a dimensional portal and meet Submariner. So Aquaman and Submariner have actually met. And they're two different Atlantis, but they're in the same position on Earth. And they coexist, but in different dimensions.
Very cool. Thank you for letting me know that. I will look that up and enjoy reading about it. And I was talking to Alan before the show. Um, and I guess I'll share the story here as well. You guys have heard of Unarius? I like
Mhm.
these people. They're interesting people. I've been interacting with them for over half a century on and off, and I'm familiar with a lot of their writings. I was reading the Atlantis series, and the Unarians maintain that you can communicate with the spirits that are talked about in the books rather easily. So while I was reading about Atlantis, and their Atlantis is explained in, I believe it's 5 books, and then another book on the serpent cult. So I was reading the first Atlantean book, which Poseidon is like a barbarian king, and he's in contact with UFOs under the guardianship of Maitreya, and it's again, it's really interesting stuff. But I asked to speak to Herodotus, who was the um, narrator of these tales. So Spirit did appear and claimed to be Herodotus. So I asked, "Are you the real Herodotus?" So he said, "Are you the real Hercules?"
Yeah.
I said, "In a manner of speaking, yes, I'm the Hercules that is here now doing this." So he goes, "There you go." And then he proceeded to explain everything puzzling in Herodotus's histories that I found puzzling anyway, and shed light on how all the information he had about the Hercules that was there before the Greeks connected with each other. And these were insights that I didn't come to on my own, um, but came to from what seemed to be an external source. And Herodotus is not in my beck and call, but he pops in every now and then with information that's helpful in my researches. So I just wanted to share that with you guys here and now as well. And I'll be looking with the show at some really rare and obscure arcana on Atlantis. I'm starting with the theory that Atlantis is in Morocco. And initially, I thought I wouldn't find anything of merit there, but I'm finding that they actually have a lot of merit in that explanation. And it ties in with the golden apples of the Hesperides and the Seven Sisters, which you guys had mentioned. So I started that on a web page on Facebook. So I'll invite you all there if you'd like to participate in that or not. So I'm really looking forward to this new adventure. I want to thank you all for being here. Happy belated Valentine's Day to you and to those who you love. And I look forward to our next conversation. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.
Pleasure.